Number 98 is going to be the first one. Is he set up and ready? Can we get the green light? Winster?
Got one.
Number 98. Ooh, we're redeemed, so let us sing.
98.
Number 98.
98.
Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. I'm redeemed, praise the Lord. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. I'm redeemed, praise the Lord. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. I'm redeemed, praise the Lord.
Good place to start. Number 105. 105. One of Johnny's favorites. Let us come worship and bow down.
Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us give before the Lord our God, our Maker. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us give before the Lord our God, our Maker. For He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture, and the sheep of His hand. Just the sheep of His hand. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our God, our Maker. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our God, our Maker. For He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture, and the sheep of His hand. Just the sheep of His hand. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our God, our Maker. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our God, our Maker. For He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture, and the sheep of His hand. Just the sheep of His hand.
All right. And go 100 up to 205. 205. You are my hiding place. Trust and hold.
Always fill my heart with a song. am strong in the strength of the Lord. You are the hiding place. You always fill my heart with song. The deliverer, whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. Let the weak say I am strong in the strength of the Lord. I will trust in you.
Woohoo! Number 151. Father, I adore you. Number 151.
Father, I adore you. Lay my life before you. Jesus, I adore you. Lay my life before you. Lay my life before you. Father, I adore you. Lay my life before you. Jesus, I adore you. Lay my life before you. Spirit, I adore you. Lay my life before you. Lay my life before you. Jesus, I adore you. Lay my life before you. Spirit, I adore you. Lay my life before you.
All right. And with that, we shall rejoice. 239. Rejoice in the Lord always. 239.
This is Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, and again I say rejoice.
There we go. Well done. Good singing, everybody. And you're close to Brother John.
Thank you. Eduardo. Senor Eduardo.
Never get the wink.
You know, my winks.
Your winks. I never get. I don't know because of the times that they happen. Like they're always for different. Yeah,
You ready for the kids event?
these are different kind of. I think he means different things with different winks.
That's true.
With the hair.
It's not a boy-girl wink.
Yeah, I know. It's usually like a good to see you type thing,
Yeah.
like glad you're here, that kind of thing.
Just seeing if any latecomers are coming.
Yeah.
Or they'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Oh, I did not want to quote that person.
Yeah, if y'all have, I don't know if you guys have gotten the first page or two of this. You ever hit this?
I was, but I did not bring my first question.
Turn around and
Oh!
This
Walk, and Dave just turns around and just starts shaking his head.
I better not have it on Tuesday night. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no, we always give it back to the bank on Tuesday.
Oh yeah, yeah. Don't worry, it's been done often, different scenarios. So not a problem.
Welcome. All going up for some prayer?
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness to earth. We thank you that through Christ, you made us your adopted children, Father. And we thank you forever for that. And we thank you for the message tonight, for whatever it is. And I pray, Father, that it won't be mere head knowledge, Father. It won't be theological knowledge, but that we would put it in practice in our relationship with you and with other people. I pray for safe trip for anyone else coming here. And I pray that we won't be thinking about the past week, but we'll concentrate on this message. And thank you for our fellowship in this time, Father, in Jesus' name.
Amen. You can turn to the Song of Solomon, chapter 3, or you have your notes that you got there, or that have it on there. On page 1, at the top right corner. We have started this and we have not finished it. We also need to get back to Matthew and finish Matthew and prophecy issues. Get sidetracked with some good stuff. So. Let's do a little bit of review on the top right hand of your handout, Song of Solomon 3:1. By the way, again, very famous people. Matthew Henry, Hudson Taylor. This isn't just me. There are many people who believe that the Song of Solomon is it's a poem or poetry, excuse me, and that it's speaking about, most of us men look at it and think, oh boy, marriage and sex, but it's really a picture of our intimacy with the Lord, and that's what we've been looking at, and I firmly believe that. And we're taking a look at various poetry as a language of love, and at Song of Solomon 3:1 at the top right there, this bride is getting ready to be married, and she says, all night long on my bed, I look for the one my heart loves. And we studied that It's actually saying night after night after night after night on my bed, I look for the one my heart loves. And we studied on page 1 that the bed in Hebrew there has a sexual connotation in it. And I thought it was interesting. We looked at Psalm 63, where King David said he was lying on his bed longing for the Lord. So that's interesting. You have that same term bed that's used by King David, not in a sexual way, but is it possibly referring to as a bride longs for the sexual intimacy of marriage, that King David is correlating that to the Lord in Psalm 63, verse 1 and 6. But anyway, she says, all night long, night after night, I look for the one my heart loves. I looked for him, but did not find him. And as you go through verses 1 through 4, notice how many times, there's like 12 times she says, I looked for the one, for him. Verse 2, for the one, for him. Verse 3, for the one, verse 4, him. And we looked at John 5:38, 39, which is very interesting, that Jesus was rebuking the Pharisees, and he says, you're studying the scriptures, that's good, but you don't realize that the scriptures speak about me. You're missing me as the key thing in life. And is it possible here that in the Song of Solomon, she isn't saying, oh, I'm trying to find out truths about doctrine in the Bible. She's saying, I'm looking for the one. And we go back to the point that we've been studying, that God is looking for an intimacy and a relationship with us. And that's what we're all longing for. And that's why I think, again, even in Christianity, we're missing the boat. We're trying to study how we can debate Jehovah's Witnesses or things like that. And the point is to seek intimacy with the Lord. That's what our ultimate need. We studied in verse 2 a real key point. I will get up now and go about the city through its streets and squares. And we notice, number 1, I will get up now. It's a choice. Eduardo has to make a choice if you want this intimacy with the Lord or not. You can have a general casual come to Bible studies and church service, but you have to make a choice to get up out of your comfy bed when it's cold and freezing maybe. And it says, go about the city, the streets, and the squares. And we talked about that when Eduardo was coming over here. The city could be on the freeway. The streets are back here on Lawndale. And the squares could be my house. He's got to find me. He's got to search for me. And it may take some intensity. Is he willing to do that or not? Am I willing to do that or not? Not just a casual, let me get on the freeway. But we gave an example where there's hundreds of homes in this area right here. What if Eduardo didn't know which home I was in? And we talked about, use an illustration. Let's say I'm going to die in 2 hours and you knew that. Would you be willing to go to every door quickly to try and find which house I'm at to say goodbye to Glenn? That would be showing your intensity of love. Are you willing to do that kind of a thing or not? And that's what this bride is willing to do. She's missing the one she loves. And we're going to get into more detail on it. So that was just a little review. The one that she loves, she's passionate to go and seek about it. We saw that on page 1. Let's go to page 2, and that's where we'll pick up where we kind of left off before. Was there any, I doubt it, but any thoughts or comments? So some of you have looked at notes on that when we went over that before. Anything that's spoken to you since you studied it, you can bring it up now or as we go along here. By the way, one thing I don't have any notes on, and then they expect on verse 2, she says she got up and she looked for him. Well, John, read 1 through 4 because I don't know if everybody's read it for us.
On the first page?
Yeah.
Okay. All night long on my bed, night after night after night after night, I looked for the one my heart loves. I looked for him, but did not find him. I will get up now and go about the city, through its streets and squares. I will search for the one my heart loves. So I looked for him, but did not find him. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. Have you seen the one my heart loves? Scarcely had I passed them when I found the one my heart loves. I held him, but would not let him go, till I had brought him to my mother's house, to the room of the one who conceived me.
You know, by the way, a lot of people don't know how to meditate or read the Bible. Is go through this tomorrow or something like that and read it and say, and stress points. I look for the one my heart loves. I look for the one, but I didn't find him. I'm going to get up now and go for the one for him. So just stress those things to see, is that the intensity that she's having, you know, as she's, you know, we all understand as men here, the intensity of the power of sexual temptation and lust, you know, the power of that, or, you know, is she having that power for her man? And should we have that for the Lord, you know, that intensity? So going to, oh, by the way, what I was going to say was, I looked for him, verse 2, but I didn't find him. What if maybe in your life, you're realizing, as we've been studying, that you want more of this intimacy with the Lord, and you're looking for him, but you're not finding him? What do you think you should do? What would you recommend to other people? And what do you say, hey, Glenn, I've been trying to do that and I just don't feel it. It's been 6 months, a year. I don't feel that intimacy with the Lord. You know, what would you suggest to anybody? Have any thoughts? What do you do in those situations?
I know you had mentioned on the text one time about, you know, you might read a book, whatever, the Attributes of God or something for the first time, and man, it changes your life. You're like, wow, this is the best book ever. And so years go by and you kind of forget about the book and you pick it back up and like, man, I want that feeling again. So you go back to read it, but then maybe the feelings aren't there. So my thinking was on this one, you say you're looking for them, but maybe you're more looking for that feeling or that emotional thing that you experienced, maybe even as a baby Christian. I think about that with my young life days and things and how unbelievable that was emotionally and spiritually. So sometimes like, okay, am I really searching for that and not necessarily Jesus? I'm searching for the emotion and the situations and things like that. So for me, is maybe just check your motive and see what, you know, are you really seeking him? Or are you seeking, you know, the pleasant life? Oh, I want to be blessed all the time. But I read that this week in my quiet time, we're appointed not only to believe, but to suffer for him. And, you know, the believe part's great. We're elected for salvation, but then we're also elected for suffering. And you're like, oof, I don't know about all that. So, yeah, I just check your motives and what are you really seeking?
Yeah, we might go back and read sections like this and say, and stress, like, help me to seek the one, him. Because it is so easy to start going to other things. Ministry, you know, like, let me, like I told you, it's so, everything I study, I want to teach other people right away. It's so hard for me to soak it in myself. I want to give it out. And that's missing the main point for me in my relationship with the Lord, you know. Any other thoughts? I'll tell you, here's a big one. One of the best verses in Scripture. When things are tough, what we really need is to know the promises of God and to hold on that he's not a liar. And he says in Hebrews 11:6, God is a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. So if I've been seeking him and not, maybe there's something I'm holding on to that's hindering that. I need to find out what that is. You know, is there something hindering that? If not, I'm really trying. Then I just hold on to the promises that he says I'm going to find him. I'm going to do it. Now I don't know what time that'd be. For Paul, it could be 2 months. For David, it could be 10 months. I don't know what God has. Each person is different. The key is, will you keep doing it? Like we hear that about marriage, like people in a bad marriage, say a husband cheats on a wife. They talk about, she might forgive him and things are fine right away. But other people, it might take years. Are you willing to stick it out and rebuild that trust or whatever, you know? Everybody, God has different plans and purposes for each person, you know. The key is, am I willing to wait however long it takes, you know? Okay. If there's not any others, go to page 2 now. Paul, you can read that top sentence. We'll see if we stop and have any comments or points.
This is a very natural and very beautiful. Love creates a perpetual dread lest the loved one should be lost. love not only brings a greater experience of joy, but a deeper capacity for pain as well. So, as the joy of the king's presence became greater, so the sorrow from his absence became deeper.
On that second line, you could underline at the beginning there, a deeper capacity for pain as well. A deeper capacity for pain as well. It reminds me of what I have on the refrigerator when people die, and I use that. It says, like, say my neighbor dies down the street or something like that. I might feel bad for them or something like that, but I'm not grieving because I don't know them. I don't have a deep love for them, type of thing, whatever. But if you really love somebody, it says on the refrigerator post, it says, grief is the price of love. Have you ever had somebody, my dad or whoever you've lost, your Dave's mom and John's mom and stuff like that. We grieved. Why? Because you have a love for them. There's an affinity and a closeness to them, or whatever like that. And I was just thinking about this with, if we love the Lord, if I'm away from him, we're gonna have some grieving and missing him and things like that. Just like the bride, long for her man or whatever like that. Again, there's times of emotions where we're not gonna feel it, but on the other hand, I think there is a truth that shouldn't we? I know I felt like I should have more emotions because we are an emotional being in relationship to God, and and I go back to this. If we're not capable of doing that, if we're not where we should be on that, what we've been studying so much, that's the amazing thing is he has that towards us. That's the crazy part, is it possible? And I believe it is. We've studied stuff on this, and we see this in the Song of Solomon, that there's a deeper capacity for pain. I remember studying one time that, like, we might think that things didn't hurt Jesus as much, but the fact that he was perfect, there's somebody talked about a belief, I don't know how to explain it, that he probably hurt more than us because of that he felt the temptation that's crazy. Is it possible he felt temptation greater than you and me? We know, like, again, to worry, to lust. Was it possible he felt it greater? Because when you're perfect, you see the problem or whatever like that, and is it possible, and I believe it is, as we've been studying, that God, and how do we know this? Scripture teaches it. Where does it teach it? Ephesians 4:30. Do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God. So we know what it's like to grieve when a loved one dies, and the pain and how great that is. Is it possible that God, he grieves, and we've been studying that, he grieves missing you and time with you? Again, I think that's why in Ephesians 3, Apostle Paul says, I want Eduardo to know the love of Christ. Because if you know the love of Christ and how great it is, that's going to motivate you like nothing else. All the do's and don'ts, they've motivated me, but then that doesn't last. But knowing somebody loves you, that's a great motivator. And knowing that we hurt him, that's an amazing thing to think about, I think. Okay, comments, questions on that?
I was thinking about that, that whenever I sin, I realize more and more that God misses me. That even if I have lustful thoughts for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that God misses me, and that causes him a lot of pain, because it's like, he can't relate with me. If I'm thinning in my mind or thinning in my heart, it doesn't matter whether I'm expressing it outwardly. If it's inwardly, that during that time, God cannot relate with me. He cannot have a good relationship with me. He's good, but he can't communicate to me when I'm in that state. And just like I can miss people if they are in pain, I can miss them because they're not communicating, they're not relating to me.
Sure.
So God can miss me. And so I mean that's the sobering thought. You know, I thought about the track recently. It said this was your life, and in the track it shows a man's life being reviewed. And recently I thought, you know, what was the expression on God's face during all of that, you know, during that.
Good way to think of things.
Like grief, you know, that so often I can be focused on, I hope no one knew what I was thinking. But God sees it, and, you know, he misses me, you know, and he grieves it. And it doesn't matter what kind of sin it is in my mind and my heart that he really misses it.
Yeah.
This is me,
Amen. I don't want to go on too much, but you're reminding me of, you know, I've said it before, how teachers that were nice to me and good, I wanted to do better for them. It motivated me more than somebody who didn't like me or whatever like that. And it's like, man, we need to get to know God, that he likes us, you know, and he wants to be with us. It's like, wow, that's again a motivating factor to want to be with him. Okay, Paul, if you want to read the second line.
The maiden allowed herself to feel needy without feeling helpless. She felt that she needed her beloved and did not have an artificial sense of self-sufficiency. The maiden did not feel it was a bad thing for her to need her beloved.
If you want to underline that, to need, you know, her beloved. It's not a bad thing to need your beloved. Also, at the end of the first line, if you want to underline, an artificial sense of self-sufficiency. Can you think of anything in your life or people's lives where we have an artificial sense of self-sufficiency? And I've shared this before. I'll give an example or two, and if y'all have any. An artificial sense of self-sufficiency. Again, when I used to first give Bible studies and talks, especially started big groups, I mean, I would be in the back hallway or the room begging God to help me because I was so full of fear. I don't think I can do this. I'm going to start speaking crazy. God help me. I'll be rebuking demons or whatever. Is fear wrong? No, but yet there's a good thing there because it was really making me dependent on God. While now I know y'all guys aren't going to throw eggs at me or things like that. So I'm more relaxed, and it can be easy to not pray and ask God to help teach a Bible study. That's an artificial sense of self-sufficiency. Another thing I think of is, I know my understanding is like the guys, when they go to campus, when they arrive there, they do good is they pray about going to witness, you know, whatever like that. Well, that's good. It's because it can be so easy to go do that. So after years and years and years, where you don't pray to witness, it's like we're in a spiritual warfare. This isn't just witnessing. We need to be praying. Otherwise, I'm in an artificial sense of self-sufficiency. You know, there's a million things I think we could think of how easy it is as Christians to fall into this trap of an artificial sense of self-sufficiency. You know, anyone else?
I guess finances. If your finances are looking okay, you're like, hey, I'm
True.
right, you know.
Got food and availability or something like that. Not true. Rather than asking God for our daily needs, even though you already have it or have things in the bank.
Or something that you've done a lot, whether it's go to work, the office, go on campus, going through the 4 laws, and then you've done a lot of driving. You know, your hair's kind of nice.
How true.
Insurance.
You know,
I've
I've often, again, you remind me of something is, you know, when I used to live in the Bayou Landing apartments, you know, there was a guy from Haiti who was there, and I became really good friends with him. He liked me, I liked him. And I went driving with him and his wife one time. And he taught me a lesson, and I've forgotten it. I need to apply this or whatever like that. I mean, we were going down, you know, in the McGregor area and things like that. I thought he was kidding. But he's, you know, we're going this way and this way. There's like 2 lanes and 2 lanes here. I mean, I'm serious. He was over at these cars. He was driving over the line and stuff like that. I'm like, oh no, we're gonna make it. You know, I mean, he couldn't drive the whole time. He was driving that and over in the line of cars coming this way and everything like that. When we got back and they stopped, they did something, you know, I never really thought of, you know, that they like just him and his wife just immediately were thanking the Lord, you know, for getting him back. I'm thinking, yes, I can't believe it. Thank God we made it back, you know. And it reminds me, like, we take for granted, you know, like Liz is too afraid to get on a plane. Every time we drive, it's so dangerous, you know, especially in Houston. You know, we should, you know, we give thanks for a meal. Should we give thanks when you get in the car and start the car, you know, that you drive, and when you arrive somewhere? I mean, that should be more than a meal to me, of us giving thanks and praising. You know, it could be an artificial sense of self. Yeah, I'm going to make it. I've driven this way a million times, but it's like, you know, we truly need the Lord in everything.
Well, you never think about it until you have a problem, right?
Right.
Your car gets stalls, and all of a sudden, you know, you're stuck, and you think, all those days that it has gotten me to my destination, was I really giving thanks? You know, this self-sufficiency, we're thinking, okay, the car does what it's supposed to do, and I never thought about it, but anything is like, you know, another thing is when, like, you lose water, you know, they're repairing it, and you don't realize how much you depend on water. You think, okay, for 3 hours, and constantly going, oh, I can't. That's right. You know,
Hot water in the shower during
Oh.
the winter. During the winter.
That's
Of course,
a
you're in
good-
Denver,
Oh
so
my
you know
gosh,
that.
yeah.
You're saying
Yeah.
that, but that was my Monday. Got home, wanted to take a shower, I had no hot water.
Oh man, that's
And
rough.
you sit there and you don't even realize, like, you know, I really like
I know, it's
You-
true. It's at that moment you think, man,
Yeah.
I should have been thanking the Lord.
Mhm.
So that's a good one to think about. You know, if you want to do a project this weekend, you know, what are areas of artificial sense of self-sufficiency? There's a million we do. The maiden did not feel it was a bad thing for her to need her beloved. I think there's a very deep thing there too. Can you think of anything in Scripture where it's okay to show that you have a need for your beloved, or have needs to express that? Any scriptures? Steve says we need to back things up with scriptures.
Talking about the Lord's Prayer, you know, like, lead me not into temptation, but deliver me
Okay.
from evil.
That's one.
What was the question?
I always get a lot of vague questions.
Areas that we
Get y'all think. You know. I'm trying to apply it. I'm going to show you something in a second. You know, of how. Say I'm really struggling. Like when I look back now, there's lots of different issues, but you know, I was just being tortured on this couch, feeling like I'm in hell for years. And I really didn't express that a lot to people. And I think it's important that we do let people know things in life or whatever, you know. And I think, again, for maybe men, it's harder, you know, you're vulnerable, whatever, but even women have the issues, but they're more sharing often or whatever. But, you know, it could be a problem with the sin area or something like that, you know, that we don't share. To say, hey, I have a need in life, you know, whatever. You think of anything in scriptures of that expressed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, prayer, going to God and saying we need things or we need help, you know, and the promises of prayer that we have from Jesus Christ about, you know, whatever you ask in my name, you haven't asked anything in my name up until this point, ask anything in my name and you will receive it.
All right.
And as well, we need to confess our sins to a brother. In James, I feel like that's a need.
Mhm.
Because if you don't, you're just, oh, I can just confess to God, I'll be all right.
Mm.
But it's humbling to confess your sin to a brother.
Yeah.
So I think those are two areas of needs in the Bible.
And Marcos is one of the best at sharing, I think, needs or expressing things and stuff. An excellent example for us to follow. I think of you know, somebody you wouldn't think. It's like Well, the really spiritual people, you don't want to share, and you got to be careful, don't share everything, but really spiritual. The Apostle Paul, I always share all the time, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, he despaired of life, and he told people that. Why? He says, as you also help me by your prayers. He himself, the most godly man around, expressed that he had come to a point of despairing of life, and he shared it because he says, I need your prayers on this, whatever. They're a help. They're part of the process, and I realize that,
Jesus in the garden,
Oh, yeah.
he needed our prayer.
Yeah.
He needed the disciples' prayers. I mean, he was going, and the Passion of the Christ movie, I feel like it depicts it pretty accurately, biblically, that he was really distressed and really needed the guys to be there for him.
I sent that to somebody, and I'm going to share with you a second who I sent it to and things like that, but how it says, it's just, you got to remember this in counseling. And if you want to counsel, don't forget this, use this in counseling when you're counseling people who are hurting. When people are hurting, one of the best things you can offer is people who identify with that. Again, a mother who loses a child, you may not understand, get them with another mother who loses a child. That's all you can do. That's a great healing. And the best thing too, this is for counseling, is Jesus said to his disciples, my soul is sorrowful to the point of death. Can you get more sorrowful than to the point of death? And this is Jesus telling people, my soul is hurting so much to the point of death. That is a great counseling tool, I think, to give to people. I forget it sometimes, and sometimes I try to remember and use it to people who are hurting. Jesus knows what it's like to hurt, and he shared that with people. One of the things I bring up with this, I was a little hesitant, but she's been very open at times where she's allowed texting and things like that. But something that really breaks my heart, and I just feel helpless, so far away and things like that, she's expressed things, and she's expressed it to me, but not really anybody else. And church is just some things with Paula. I mean, she gets to the point of her and Liz, I know because I've been there, done that, where you're in constant physical misery and you're not sleeping ever. And this goes on for months and months and even years. It's a whole new ballgame. I'm not taking anything away from your suffering, but it's a whole new ballgame. Remember Job's sufferings? The last one was physical, because I think that is the hardest, because you still have all the other problems, and then you have the physical on top of that. But, Paula every once in a while, finally shares something with me, and I think it's just because I brought her into this stuff, whatever. But she really has it with her church people, and then she's sick and doesn't go as much or something like that. Talk to maybe Liz more, but I went ahead and I felt like Paula was fine with it because she's been an open person at times about struggles, and I've shared texts, But I went ahead and wrote Jane, who is a lady of the pastor over there, that says, I felt Paula was okay, whatever, and I just shared. I says, I'm going to give you some details, because she met Paula a while back. Says, well, Paula seemed fine. I says, this is something I'm hearing all the time. I mean, I can't even hardly, because of the way just I am, I can hardly stand it. And I hear with people like Liz or Paula, in intense suffering, but you may not be able to read as much, but I'll share. It says, I wrote Jane, and I gave her a quote from Paula, and she writes me, and she says, sorry, I'm really struggling with life, just getting worse as each day passes. And this has gone on for months and months. This isn't just now. I can't even pay my rent this month, and my manager is coming here for a meeting today. I think I'm going to get an ultimatum of going back or being fired. And on that, there's just a lot of she hadn't been able to work for a while because she's so sick, she had to stop. But then she kind of needs to work for money. And then there's disability issues. I don't know how England works. It's complicated. If you're not working and not fired, disability, it's just not coming in a lot. She says, my family don't seem to care. not heard from any of them. She has a grandson, and the son doesn't really have her see him much anymore now that she broke up with her husband. She's off on her own, and they don't do too much. I only see my mom and dad if I go there, which I struggle with. It would have been my wedding anniversary in 2 days, but I'll just be home alone as always. I seem stuck with no way of going forward. The more I'm alone, the less I want to see anyone. And if you've ever experienced sickness and depression deeply, it snowballs. It's hard to not break out of that. I pray you're feeling okay and managing to get some peaceful sleep. She says, I know. I'm sharing with them, like, I want you to also share with your church, share with these, it's okay, you see that I accept you and things like that, I want you to share with, ladies and stuff like that, and it's just, she's just not been the person to do that. And you'll see kind of like, she says, I know it's just so hard to share openly. She says, I feel like such a failure. And let me share with this that maybe you don't understand, maybe you do, but especially also, let's say many women, if a guy cheats on her, whatever, she blames herself. I did something wrong. So, but Paula became a Christian. We're in a spiritual warfare. Her husband's not a Christian. It can be a normal thing that he finally leaves or whatever, for whatever reasons. He has a midlife crisis, things like that. But women still blame themselves. They can be the most beautiful woman in the world, and they still think they're ugly. They're comparing themselves. The pressure is so great or whatever like that. So, she feels like a failure. I tried to share things, but, it's easier said than done or whatever. And she also needs to share that with people over there because we're far away, even, just online. She says, yeah, I know I can't explain it. It's just so hard for me. I've always been the strong one. I'm the one who is always there for everyone and helps anyone and everyone. I know you're right to share with other people. I'm going to try. Glenn asked her to share things. She says it's difficult to do so. God, I'm going to lovingly push her to do so, which I did, and she did. And Paula agrees that she should do that, and I think she finally did the other day, more so with one of the assistant pastors, and then she did share with the later like that. To let know that there are needs or whatever. Maybe they can help financially or different things like that. By the way, I want to share. Steve is. I don't like getting into the issues much. I don't know. It's just difficult. Like, she has that church over there. She needs to share with them. They're small churches. We're not a church in one sense here. We don't do things and can't help out so much, whatever. But turn that up. Steve has a real passion for Paula and Liz. He knows they're suffering. He's always wanting to try to help, with his supplements and things like that. But, Steve has known he's wanted to kind of, I'm just telling you what Steve, he's not here, but it's like, I don't know the answer on this, but I do wonder about, like people, we had the kids event, they want to give to the kids event, but why don't they give to other issues in the church of people hurting? I'm for giving to the kids, but yet what about all the years of church people hurting and things like that? But then there's also the issue I struggle with is a lot of people are just wasting money. They go out to eat all the time or whatever. I don't want to support that, So that's the dilemma. There's not a lot of true beggar people. A lot of them are moochers or something like that. They want to live a nice lifestyle. So that's the dilemma I have. But, if a person's not having food to eat, I think she even missed some meals in the past, but I don't know. I'm not there. That's why she needs to talk to her church and things like that. But nevertheless, Steve has really had a passion. He doesn't believe that the government should be providing for things. He believes the church should be taking care of people. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. On the other hand, I'm just telling you my dilemma. On the other hand, it's like, if Perry gets sick and gets disability, well, he's worked for years. That's his money. He should get that money back that he paid into it. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to freeloading off of something. So I don't know Paula's situation of what the government should be, what they should provide, or is she getting too much? That each person kind of needs to decide that. But I'm just letting you know, Steve has such a heart for things. He's giving her $300 this month to finish off her rent and pay that or like that. That's just the way he is. He just feels these things, and he's talked about this for a while. He wanted to save $10 a week or something like that for her, and he stored it up for a while because I wasn't sure where to go with these type of things, and he's helping cover that, and at least keep praying that she figures something out of these work situations, of how that goes or whatever, but just sharing.
How did her church family respond and the lady that she spoke with?
There was good. That's important. You would hope, and I would assume that people were good, and I think it was fine. And she said the pastor, after he talked to her, texted her back and says, I have the quote somewhere. It says, "You're not a failure, Paula." And look what even the Apostle Paul said. He says, when you're in Christ, you're a new creation and things like that, or like that. So, that text, was showing an affirmation after the fact of having talked to her, which is thankfully these days you don't know about churches and how they respond. It should be automatic, but it sounds like, Paul was good that she shared, and that Jane's the coming Wednesday to come bring lunch. And so, Jane was not aware of what I had revealed, or whatever. And thankfully now it's more out in the open. And I think that's a huge, important thing or whatever, of course, So thank you. I want to share that. Turn off these when people. Okay, we can read the next line. Next line, Paul.
There is something good in the main speaking of her beloved, yet it came after their relationship was well established. The relationship did not begin, nor was it founded on her pursuit of him.
Okay. We love because he first loved us. Very important to realize he's the one coming out after us. And again, I think that's the key. Isn't so much my trying to think of how to love him more. It's thinking about how he loves me and using that as a motivation to love him back. Next line when you're ready.
With what constancy she sought the communion. She began at dead of night, as indeed it never too late to seek renewed fellowship. Yet she thought on. The trees were lonely. It was a strange place for women to be at such a strange time. But she was too earnest and patient to be abashed by such circumstances.
I didn't think about this at all until it crossed my mind a couple of days ago or something like that when I saw that. On that second line, in the middle, you could underline a strange place for a woman to be at such a strange time. I don't know, I would think of, we were mentioning here, Eduardo has some younger sisters, what about them going out at 2 p.m. Downtown by herself, one of his sisters, going to minister, where she's just determined, to share Christ no matter what it costs and the dangers or something like that. And here you have a woman, out at night. It just makes me think like she's determined no matter what the obstacle is, that she's going to find her man, and even if it's in the middle of the night, and are you and I in the most dire situations and dangerous situations, whatever the cost, willing to find our man, that intimacy with him. Okay, the next section is verse 2, letter C, verse 2 starts.
I will rise and go about the city. I will seek the one I love. This emphasizes the urgency and depth of her seeking. She was safe even under the supervision of the watchmen, but they could not help her find her beloved, even at her request.
So she goes out and she meets some watchmen, who give her some advice or like that. But underlined at that second line, but they could not help her find her beloved. But they could not help her find her beloved. What's an obvious correlation to that?
No one can seek the Lord for you.
You know, some of us have known Don and thought, man, this guy is something else or like that. Maybe I'm teaching something tonight, or you're counseling somebody at campus or somebody you're trying to minister to. We can help lead people to the water trough, you know, but they got to drink it themselves, you know, whatever. You and I, we can help each other. I can teach something tonight, but it's you personally, John, who the watchman, I can't help you, you can't help me. We can help each other, you know, go a direction, but to personally find him is your decision, you know, whether you're willing to get up and do that or not. Pastor can't, your friend can't, your spouse can't, you know, you got to personally do it, you know.
She did not sit down and say to any one of them, "Oh, watchman of the night, thy company cheered me. The streets are lonely and dangerous, but if thou art near, I feel perfectly safe, and I will be content to stay a while with thee." Nay, but she leaves the watchman and still goes along the street until she finds him whom her soul loveth.
Some underlining thoughts on the second line there is midway down is leaves. She leaves the watchman. She leaves. At the end of that line, she finds him. And then on the next line, who does she find? The one her soul loveth. She leaves, finds him, the one that her soul loveth. Again, we need watchmen, we need parents, but we can't have parties here all the time, you know, and fellowship as great as it is. We're going to be going home, and at that point, you know, on the weekend or whatever after the party, you know, are we going to we leave it and seek to find the one our soul loveth. And when I think about leaving, I also think about what we mean by that is we can become, you know, too dependent on other people to make us happy, you know. And I need to leave Eduardo making me happy, you know. He didn't say the right thing today or something like that. It's like, leave that stuff alone. Come on, you know. Let's go to the Lord now to find our joy. Leave the watchman that you're looking to. It could be a mentor. It could be a spouse. It could be, you know, praises and approval by people. Leave that milk. Let's get on to the meat of the Lord, you know, in life. I have a question I thought of here on this section. Do you love the Lord or people more? Do you love Jesus or approval more? Of just what I shared, you know. Because if I love people's approval, I'm not going to leave the watchman, you know, in a sense. My heart will be caught up in daily looking to friends and people to bring me my joy, you know, and I need to leave that. Whom my soul loves, I just wrote the word reprogrammed. You know, we all can have struggles. It's like Paula feeling like a failure. You need to leave that and reprogram how the Lord sees you. You and I look into approval and things like that. We need to leave that, reprogram our minds, our souls, you know, to how the Lord views us. Next line.
It is probable that lighting upon these watchmen, he promised himself much counsel and comfort from them, but was disappointed. It pleased God many times to cross our likely projects that himself alone may be leaning on.
Beautiful. That first line, if you want to underline, much counsel and comfort from them, but was disappointed. You know, again, if I'm looking to Paul, it can help for a long time, but eventually I'm going to get disappointed because he's not God and I'm not God, you know. And I was thinking about this. Remember I wrote about y'all might wonder sometimes you see texts, that I do about this girl in France, that had been raped by her father. And she was just like, and I think it's good in a way that she was like, I am God, in terms of I have revealed something to her that has so helped her or whatever like that for a couple days or a few days. But then there's the dip, of despair, because I'm not God, Now, again, it would be a tool to help a person, encourage them, but then she's got to go to the Lord, she's going to be disappointed if she's ultimately looking to me. Now, I want to say that there are some people like a young believer, like her, children that you may have. We do need to hold their hand longer than other people. But I shouldn't have to hold Paul's or John's hand anymore right now in terms of every day to make them happy, whatever like that. But with younger people, you need to do that some. You need to be there more for them for a period of time until they can kind of get on their own 2 feet,
On Psalm 3:4, finding her.
Beloved, that's your blank, beloved.
Daily did I pass by them. When I found the one I loved, I held him and would not let him go, until I brought him to the house of my mother, and into the chamber of her who conceived me.
Hooray.
And I found the one I loved. She dreamt that her diligent search was rewarded. Though the watchman mentioned in previous verse could not help her, she nevertheless found the one she loved.
Maybe that's a clue to what I mentioned earlier is maybe you're not finding the Lord, but you can dream of it. It's going to happen. I'm going to dream and feel like I've gotten him, even though I'm not feeling it now.
It is repeated 4 times in the first 4 verses. The one I love. This is how she thought of a special man. I held him and would not let him go. It's easy to picture the relieved maiden clinging to her beloved, feeling calm and secure in his embrace.
You can underline that. I held him and would not let him go. We'll touch on some more of that as we go through this, but I held him and would not let him go.
Would not let him go. It seems to have been the same kind of embrace that Mary Magdalene had upon Jesus when she first saw the resurrected Lord. John 20.
Now, I'm not sure about that, whether that's implied in that verse, whatever. And Esme brought up something too, but I don't know. We don't know. There's a lot of teaching that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, but Scripture doesn't say that. We don't know, as far as I know, about her, what kind of sin she was or like that. But that's been kind of the belief people have taught since the 6th century or something like that, But again, that's not a word Scripture. But Esme was bringing up something true. If she was, it's interesting that wasn't she the first one that Jesus, saw after his resurrection? It's just like, he didn't go to the godly people, but he went to a woman, which was not maybe normal. That he didn't go to Peter. Was she possibly? Again, we don't know. Scripture doesn't say that, but I don't know why it came about. It's like, was she a really sinful woman? It's like Esme was making up a good point. I was thinking about the woman in France. Is like, is that if that were true, it would be cool that you can be the most vilest person, and Jesus he showed that in this illustration of meeting her first, not to all the godly people and stuff like that. What an honor that she got to meet him first. A woman who wasn't considered as hierarchy as back at that time. Was she potentially a really sinful woman that she got the privilege, of meeting the Lord, and something to share with people who've been the more evil people of the world, and done evil in life, Guess we've come this far, so why don't we finish off? Take one, pass it down, please. Some for Martha and Rafa. All right, top of page 3.
In either interpreting or applying Song of Solomon 3, verse 1 to 4, the relationship between Jesus and many people, many commentators have noted that this is an example of how the believer, under some sense of separation from Jesus, must seek after.
Jesse, who is to me one of the most intelligent guys who ever came out of ministry, left, and years later he asked me a question, and I shared, I think the key is this relationship and intimacy with the Lord. And again, the example of King David, who says, "Oh God, you're my God, earnestly I seek you," in the Old Testament, you see that in the Psalms, this passion King David had to seek the Lord. And Jesse asked me, well, that's an interesting point. That's a really good point. Anything in the New Testament says, sure. Apostle Paul says, I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship. So he already knew Christ saved. So what did he mean by that? He wanted more deep intimacy with the Lord. I want to know Christ more and more deeply, or whatever like that. That's the goal of what we're studying here.
When either in a dream or in reality, we lose a sense of his presence, let us thirst for him, and then in the finding with new devotion, let us hold him and refuse to let him go.
Underline, hold him and refuse to let him go. Hold him, refuse to let him go. And again, as we get to the end of this, we're going to see it's a serious issue there to not let him go. Question, any thoughts? How do we let him go? Hold him, refuse to let him go. How have you let him go? How have people let him go in your life?
About allow him to quiet time.
Okay. Time with him.
About replacing that time with him with other things. Even if it is ministry stuff, as we talk plenty of time. You may sacrifice your quiet time, your time in prayer with, service.
Right.
So, or counseling. Other things.
Not practicing his presence. When you're maybe sitting at your desk, or wherever you have your quiet time, next to the beach or wherever, in your car or class, whatever, you can be thinking about him then, but then you get up and go to your to-do list, and which I'm totally guilty of, and you totally forget about him. You're not necessarily sinning, you're just not thinking about him, neglecting him in a sense.
And remember, we studied this in a great video we saw a couple of weeks ago. You refuse to let him go. We often think of completely leaving the church and the ministry, but he was saying it might just be one little area in your life, that you let him go. In other words, you're still reading your Bible, you're coming to church, you're doing some good things, but there's a private area where we let him go in that area, whatever. The prodigal son doesn't mean a full going away, but it can be small areas in our life we've let him go. Okay.
Until I brought him to the house of my mother, maiden dreamed of bringing her beloved home with her, to always be together with him, and to enjoy the intimacy of the chamber of her mother's home.
I want to bring him to the most, neat. Now, don't get any ideas, guys, with this, okay? Just an example is like, if I were courting a woman, dating her, where I want to take her to Kima. That's the intimate place there to me. It's a cool place, a cool atmosphere, whatever, eating along the water like that. You would take somebody you want, to woo or whatever. Do we want Jesus to come to our most intimate places, our thought life and different things in life,
Don't take her there on your first date. Walk up there.
All right.
So cling to him, to lead him gently, but forcefully to her mother's house and into the maternal bosom.
gently but forcefully, if you want to underline that, gently but forcefully. I need to go over some time, but some of y'all know I got beat up many years ago. Satan was trying to scare me and stuff like that. Guy was beating me up, and then it's a miraculous story. I don't tell it enough, we need to share it all the time, but I got to see the guy again later at a time, but I didn't know who he was, whatever. And I just remember he came to me, and I didn't know who he was. He beat me up, big time, months earlier. And he came, and I remember he kind of like grabbed me, like, I want you to come or whatever. It was forcefully, but it was gently. I don't know how to explain that, whatever, where the look he had and everything, and I didn't know who he was. I went with him. And this guy that I don't know, what he meant is that he just wanted me to come from my doorstep out onto the porch, whatever like that. And he just kind of, grabbed me, but it was a gentle grab to where I just knew he wasn't trying to beat me up. Again, I didn't know who he was. I didn't recognize him, who he was. And he forcefully but gently led me. And I think, I don't know, maybe, I'm just trying to think that's with Jesus, like he wants us to kind of forcefully but gently, because it shows him, I mean business, I'm really serious about this, and again, we're going to see some stuff at the very end of this that you'll see more of what I mean by this, of why Jesus wants me to forcefully yet gently, in a gentle way, pull him towards us, to pull him with us, Okay.
The fact that it is in the house of her mother shows that she expected it to be when they were in fact married, and not as a premarital sexual rendezvous. That they might entertain and embrace him and gain my mother's consent, and so proceed to the consummation of the marriage.
At the end of the first slide, if you want to know, not as a premarital sexual rendezvous. And I don't. Just thoughts is like it needs to be done in the proper way. Of seeking the Lord, intimacy with Him. You can think about that. Okay.
She's not looking for illicit consummation of her love. Consummation she wants, but even in her dreams, she wants the consummation to be right. Where in human literature does one find a text so erotic and yet so moral as this?
And if that's a Song of Solomon, which I believe it is, it's like it's so erotic, but yet I can read it now and it doesn't bother me. It's just like I see it as Christ. It's not some kind of erotic thing. I see what I think it's applying to. And you want to do it in the proper way. First, not an illicit, looking for illicit consummation, whatever. I like that verse at the end of Colossians 3. It says, "Don't awaken love until it's time." It's just, I guess I would say right now, it's time. Awaken the love of the Lord. Go for it. Pursue Him. Reading on.
This passage may also reflect ancient Israelite marital customs now unknown to us. Perhaps we should notice that Isaac brought Rebekah into the tent of his mother, even though Sarah was deceased, and they consummated their marriage. Genesis 24:67. Applying this symbolically, Paul further noticed the steps of amazing progress toward her beloved. She loved him. She sought him. She found him not. She found him. She held him. She brought him.
And that when she brought him into the chambers, I think it has the idea of she had sex with him. She wanted the deepest intimacy possible. And do you and I want that deepest intimacy level possible, or just the superficial, going to church type of thing, And that required what we're studying here. diligently going through the streets and the squares and doing all the at night in danger or whatever it required. That could mean physical suffering. That's another thought, which I've known how hard it is to seek the Lord in physical suffering, in depression, in grieving at the loss of your loved one, to find the Lord in those times of our life, in financial problems, in what Paul is experiencing, to be diligent to go find him and seek him. Interesting point here that the very famous, probably the most intelligent preacher ever was, or whatever, I guess maybe, Charles Spurgeon.
Spurgeon also made great application of the fact that the maiden held him and would not let him go. Mark, that according to the text, it's very apparent that Jesus will go away if he is not held. I held him and I would not let him go, as if he would have gone if he had not been firmly retained. When he met with Jacob that night at the Jabbok, he said, "Let me go." He would not go without Jacob letting him, but he would have gone if Jacob had loose his hold. The patriarch replied, "I will not let thee go, except thou bless me." This was one of Christ's ways and manners. It's one of the peculiarities of his character. When he walked to Emmaus with the two disciples, he made as if he would have gone further. They might have known it was none other than the angel of the covenant by that very habit. He would have gone further, but they constrained him, saying, "Abide with us for the day is far spent." If you willing to lose Christ's company, he is never intrusive. He will go away from you and leave you till you know his value begins to pine. "I will go," says he, "return to my place till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face, and their affliction never seek me early. He will go unless you hold him."
I think the important line is at the end, the third line from the bottom. If you are willing to lose Christ's company, he is never intrusive. He will go away from you and leave you till you know. Why is all of this stated? Till you know his value and begin to pine for him. I think that's the reason this is discussed here, is if he just kind of easily went away or things like that. I mean, if he didn't go away, I don't think we appreciate things in life. We take things for granted too much when they're always there. Like I think of, y'all helping with some things or whatever. It's just like, well, I don't appreciate it as much as if y'all are gone, it's like y'all died or something like that. Then you appreciate what you had more. So I think Jesus is trying to teach us something that, and I know I've had that when I was growing up, let's say in relationship, I wanted the girl to really, really, really want me, want me to be around and stuff like that. And Jesus says, I want to be loved and I want you to really want me. And if you don't, I'm going to go away, because that'll teach you to value me, because you're going to miss me. You're going to see that you need me and things like that. It's interesting. I remember studying this when you heard that song, "An Air Pining," and it was like, what is that talking about? I had no idea what that was talking about. I remember studying years ago that, but it says here, he's going to leave till you know his value and begin to pine for him. The word pine means to torture or cause to experience pain. It's one of the definitions. To torture or cause to experience pain. And again, just think about hurting times in your life where people backstabbed you, depression, grieving, suffering, physical suffering. Was it torture to cause you to experience pain, to where, you get to the point where I've got to have Jesus. I can't make it anymore. I'm miserable. I'm lonely. I'm hurting. I'm struggling with this sin. The temptations of sin that are so strong, where you get to the point where you realize I cannot do this. I need him. I'm desperate. I'm hurting. It's hurting. It's torture that I'm losing the battle in this sin temptation. It also means you feel very unhappy because they are not with you. That's beautiful. You get to the point where you feel really unhappy that my girlfriend, my boyfriend is not with me. I'm so in love with them and I so miss them and things like that, whatever. It's just like with Jesus, he leaves so that you miss him and you realize the value of him. So when he comes back, you realize the importance of holding on to him. You don't want to lose him again. You know what it's like to not have him help you with sin, loneliness, depression, all these type of things. And the bottom there, Paul?
Because Jesus must be held. He will go unless you hold it. Jesus is willing to be held. He's not trying to take us. Jesus can be held. We can grasp him by faith. Jesus himself must be held, not merely creed, tradition, or ceremony.
And that is a favorite section of mine. Song of Solomon 3, 1-4, Colossians 3, 1-4 is also a favorite section of mine, interestingly enough. Which maybe that totally correlates to this of setting your mind on this, Colossians 3, 1-4. That will close that. Any final comments or questions on this application in your life? Paul?
So I was just thinking that if I or another Christian says, I have a problem with loneliness, then would that be considered a sin? As far as if someone said, "Oh, you're not holding on to Jesus, that's why you feel lonely." I know we have a Bible study on loneliness, but something like murder or lust, we definitely define those as sin. But what about loneliness? If some Christian feels like, I feel like I have to get married, or if some Christian says, I'm not getting the fellowship I want, or something. I often think about that scripture that they encourage one another daily, so you not be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. So, like if people are not being encouraging, then it's like, so we say, "Oh, you're not doing your part," So, but if I were to say, "Well, I'm feeling lonely," so that means that there's some sin, like not holding on to Jesus or something, or some people say that they feel okay when they're alone, and other people that feel like
Sure.
they don't want to be alone, or they want people to communicate with them, or that I grew up in a family that spent so much time watching television, for example. So, like, to me, I don't consider necessarily watching a movie to be fellowship, because I can do that with or without the other person. So, I think about Hebrews 10:24-25, says, "Let us encourage one another and stimulate one another to love and good deeds." So, like, watching a movie, I don't consider that, like interaction necessarily between the people in the group, unless they discuss the movie afterwards.
Right.
So it just it's.
I want to say something that's really important. I think you remind me of it is, generally speaking, for the most part, if you're willing to tell me something or somebody's willing to tell me, don't ever make that person feel ostracized or anything about sharing, because especially with men, we have a tough time. If you cut me off, if I tell you I got a problem with this or that, it's going to stifle men. But I think it's a beautiful thing to go ahead and share your story. Just like the Paula thing, or like that. I was encouraging her, share it, even if it is sinful, it shows you have an attitude of, if you don't want to share it, then your attitude is, I don't care, I'm going to do this on my own. So if you're sharing that, I think if you're the counsel person, should let them know, thank you for sharing, and let's work at this. It shows you're struggling, and whether it's loneliness or a sin or whatever, that it's good to be open for the most, in those that person knows it's okay. And I think if you know I think more easy for me to explain, if y'all have a thought you share, but is depression, where if Paul's feeling depressed, come to me and share with me, and I don't want you to feel bad that you're struggling with anything, even if it is a sin or like that. That it's good that you're open and sharing. You feel accepted by me or whatever like that. Now, let's say, David died and Paul is depressed, and 10 years from now, he's still depressed over David's death, and he's not doing anything and not serving the Lord. I might be a little tougher with Paul at that point. You know what I'm saying? At first, and for the most part, generally, I think it's wise to be careful to let Paul know. But after there could come a point where you could say, Paul, I think because depression is not wrong, but it can become sin if you don't deal with it and it starts affecting other areas of your life. If you keep coming to me, a million times, and you're not doing anything to change about some situation, then you might be more straightforward with the person. But you know what I'm saying? Generally speaking, I think, it's good to share whatever you're feeling, lonely, depressed. Like Paula, I think you need to share with your church family. He told her also, the pastor guys, he said what I said was, you need your church family, and that means being vulnerable to share you're lonely and things like that, whatever that you're hurting or whatever it might be, And if you're the one hearing that you make sure that person feels accepted, even though they're struggling with something, and maybe you don't have a problem with it, whatever, most everybody's lonely, even in the church or whatever like that. So that's a normal struggle that people are having. Anything else? Marcos?
I think that was really compelling what you said about the bride dreaming about her intimacy with her man, and in the same way we can dream about our intimacy with the Lord. It's like setting a goal, but it's more than a goal. It's like everything, So
Amen.
I will meditate upon it.
Awesome. Anything else? Could have a new prayer session tomorrow. Should be speaking in tongues next week. Not doing it, but teaching it. Prayer session tomorrow. Or something else
6:30 prayer session. Is that what
tomorrow? Yeah.
Neil Fallon?
Yep. John, you want to close for some prayer?
Absolutely. Lord, yeah, thank you so much for the plethora of material you've given us here in the U.S. and really everywhere that you can get internet, so much online and things. And we praise you and thank you for that. And thank you that you gently but forcefully pull us to you. And when we walk away from you, it's not that you can't communicate with us, but that you choose not to, because you want us to be wooed back to you and realize what we're missing. And thank you for forgiveness of seeking things other than you. And thank you for our guest here, Perry, and his travels from Denver. And thank you for him and all he does, even for our ministry behind the scenes. And thank you for his house, and it's a great place to worship. Thank you for Eduardo visiting with us, and pray you bless him and his work and his ministry he has there on Sundays. And we just thank you for the Song of Solomon and those who are teaching us what it really means, an intimate walk with you. And thank you for all this in Christ's precious name.
Amen. Snacks, chilling, popcorns, all kind of things.
Green chili, you said?
Chilling.
Just chat. Caesar does make a good green chili stew.
Oh,
Dave and I have been
yeah.
blessed a few times with.
Yeah, that's right.
One was unfortunately here in Harvey, but it was still a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
remember you saying that. Did you get stuck over there? It started raining. And
Mhm.
you were afraid.
It was a great place to be stuck because we were able to watch. We basically watched the news. Almost 24/7. So and we don't have TV in the house. Yeah, on purpose.
Some of the crew.
Yeah, they did ribs. And yeah, and then
Eduardo.
we get quiet times together. And we listen to Tony Evans for quiet times in the morning. So we all three we listen to some praise music. We get some quiet time. I mean, for what it was a lot going on. It was a good time.
It was a time that was